We have a saying around C12, you've heard it. We say do is greater than talk, right? Priorities are what we do. Everything else is just talk. And so, coaching, accountability is such a critical piece of that. And ironically, or maybe not so ironically, CEOs and owners, leaders at the highest level lack accountability. There's not a lot of people holding them accountable.
Hey there, I am so excited about this episode because we are talking all about leadership with Steve Sargent, who is the chair for C12 South Florida. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Are you kidding? Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I am so thrilled that you're here because I am part of you're my chair where
right.
we get to work together, which is so much fun. And I wanted to bring you on to the show because you work with so many leaders with NC12. And so we're going to have a really fruitful conversation about what you're seeing, what are leaders dealing with today, how you're helping them grow. And let's start with, for those that don't know, what is C12?
So C12 is the world's largest peer advisory network of Christian CEOs and business owners. So all over the world, mostly in the US, but in a number of other countries as well, Christian CEOs and owners gather together monthly in forums of about 12 peers to build great businesses for a greater purpose. So that's a little bit about C12.
How does one even become a C12 chair?
Wow, great question. So first of all, it's a calling, to be honest with you. It really is a calling. So there's about 230 of us. And every one of us, I think, would say that we're called to it. The vast majority of us are entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs. Many of us have some kind of ministry background as well. But yeah, it is a calling. And actually, most chairs were C12 members before they were chairs. And that was true for me as well. I was a C12 member as I was running and scaling my last business.
Oh, that's so cool. And we have had Mike Sharrow on the podcast, who is the president of C12. And it's so exciting it was so much fun to chat with him and just meet all of the incredible people in this community who truly have a heart to serve their people and to grow their business. Yeah. That is one thing that I find. So C12 has a conference every other year. And it was so much fun to be part of that and to see how many leaders truly care about their people. That's why when I'm out there and talking to people that are saying, oh, company culture is horrible and leaders don't care, I'm like, no, they do. They do care. I promise you, there are still tons of leaders that really do care about not only building a business, but helping your people and helping them grow in all different areas of life. So you say it's a calling. When did you know that it was your time to leave the business world and to get into this role?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So for me, that was about 2 years ago. It was fall of 2023. And, I like to say that, God was really moving the ground underneath me. So, a number of things occurred, both personally and professionally. Just experiencing loss, experiencing betrayal. Just some really tough stuff. And, as a result of all of that, it really caused me to pause and reflect and take time to ask God and hear from God, like what's going on here? Are you in this? What's kind of going on as I address all of these things that seem to have come out of the blue. And, during that time, over the course of months, knew that this was for me, and it was something that He was clearly calling me to, and to a territory that, quite frankly, South Florida is not my home. And so, I'm like, really there? How could that possibly be? I don't know anybody. And so, it's been amazing, and so glad to be. So, but I remember sitting in my C12 forum, 3 years ago, up in Philadelphia, and hearing all about the Dream Manager program, right, as a part of the C12 curriculum, and then only come to meet you in Palm Beach, and here you are, a part of C12 South Florida, one of the founding members. And so it's just so cool.
So cool. Yeah, it's so funny how that all plays out. And I met Mike and started chatting with him. And I said, yeah, I would love to be a part of C12, but we don't have a chapter here. And the closest one is in Orlando. And I thought about maybe just going up to Orlando once a month and checking it out. And then he said, oh, well, Steve is going to be opening up this new chapter in South Florida. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. So it really is interesting how that all plays out. And obviously with C12, we are incredible partners with theirs, and they so love the Dream Manager, and many C12 chairs and members are implementing the program. In fact, Reed Hutchinson, we just had him on the show, and he is a member of C12. I got to see him at the conference, and he has implemented the Dream Manager. They have a few Dream Managers on their team. So it's so much fun that our missions are so in alignment that we now get to collaborate and work together, which is a beautiful thing.
It sure is.
So what were some of your biggest challenges with leading teams, growing a business? Like how did you navigate that world when you were in it?
Yeah. So my sort of entrepreneurial journey goes back 30 years. And so, as I look back on the last 30 years, I kind of split it in half. In the first 15 years, a bit of a solopreneur, and then, launching a number of different businesses. And, after about 15 years, listen, I just fell deeply in love with Jesus and people. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to be in ministry. And so after 15 years, some doors opened into full-time vocational ministry. I was on staff at a large church for a number of years and was doing ministry development in Zimbabwe and El Salvador and some other places overseas, and leading teams and helping pastors launch income-producing projects, launch businesses so that they could kind of get off aid, foreign aid, and be self-sufficient and care for their communities, which was awesome. And then after a number of years, I missed the business world and felt called back into business. And so I ended up entering into healthcare, which was a new industry for me. And the challenges, my gosh, the challenges, many of them are the same everywhere, right? I'm sure many of the entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders you talk to, it's the same things over and over again. And for me, that was certainly the case. It was, navigating partnership and the challenges that come with that. It was walking into an existing organization that I was now an owner and partner and going to be scaling, and wanted to do that well. But I was walking into a highly toxic culture at the time and saying, okay, like how am I going to build on this foundation, right? What does that look like? So that was the initial challenge. And then, over time, as we scaled, as we grew, all kinds of different challenges that come with scaling, right? And sort of navigating just that growth and expansion and, growing pains, not just the size of the staff, but multiple locations and spreading out geographically. So, those were some of the challenges. And then, just personal work-life balance, maximizing profits. I mean, all the things that tend to keep us up at night that are stressors for most CEOs and owners.
It's interesting to hear about your journey because it's like this collection of skills that you were able to gather so that when you are working with all of these different entrepreneurs, different industries, different size organizations, and now you have a lot of different tools to pull from, which is really helpful when dealing with so many different types of leaders. Mm-hmm. With your groups, so you are the chair for C12 South Florida. You have 3 groups, I think, right now.
Yeah, four forums groups now. Yep.
Blowing up over there. So
it's crazy.
Four groups, lots of different leaders. And you also are connected with all of the chairs at C12. So I'm curious, locally, what are the conversations that you're having? You're meeting with your groups, not only as groups, but also one-on-one with each of the individuals. So What do those conversations look like today?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just say, it is an honor and a privilege to get to do what I do. I wake up every morning. I can't believe that I get to do this. And it's amazing that I get to pull on, my life's experiences like many of us do, right? We look back and go, oh man, that makes so much sense now, right? Why I went through that, or, I was given this. And so it really has all come together, but the conversations are incredible. I would say it's interesting. People join C12 for typically one of three reasons. They either want to get better at growing their business, right? They want the business help, or, because of their faith, they're trying to figure out how to really integrate their faith and operate their business, steward their business. As a believer, as a Christian, how do I do that well, right? In this culture, in this world. Or third, it's about the community. And you mentioned community a couple of times. And it's that, hey, I've got friends that share my values, but I can't talk to them about business. They don't understand the stressors, the things that maybe keep me up at night. They have a 9 to 5, they punch a clock, nothing wrong with that. It's just different. They're different stresses. And hey, I've got people in the business world that I can gather with, I can get insight from, maybe share best practices, but they don't necessarily see through the same lens or worldview that I do. They don't share my values. And so people join C12 because they find both, right? I have this community, they share my values, and I can get the pure knowledge and wisdom from the rest of this group. So I bring that up because when I meet with these folks, and I meet with folks like you, right? Sometimes it's business, right? We dig right into the business. What's going on? We look at revenue generation, operations management, organizational development, financial management, whatever it is going on, culture, the people. But sometimes it's personal. And in fact, I would say most of the time it's personal. Most of the time it's, here's what's going on in my life, right? That's flowing out of my role in the business. And so, it's interesting. You mentioned the broader community. C12 recently partnered with Barna Research to do some surveys of CEOs and business owners all over the country. And we just went through these data sets, so it's still pretty fresh, but a couple of interesting data points. And I mentioned these already. The two biggest stressors of all CEOs by far of CEOs and business owners is number one, maximizing profitability. And number two, maintaining my own work-life balance personally. Now, the interesting thing is that, and these weren't just Christian CEOs, it's just CEOs across the board. The interesting thing about that data point, the second one, the work-life balance, was that the vast majority don't see themselves responsible for impacting the work-life balance of those that work for them. So while the top stressor was their own personal work-life balance, the vast majority don't see themselves responsible for the work-life balance of those who work in their companies. Isn't that interesting? And kind of sad, right? And so I think that's worth talking about. But even before we get into that, if you'd like to go there, work-life balance is a bit of a false reality. It's a bit of a slippery slope, if you will. And Mike Sharrow talks about this. Trying to balance my work and the rest of my life, it's a fragmented approach to life. Well, I have my business over here. I have my family over here. I've got my friends over here, right? All these different aspects of my life. And I try to spend enough time and effort with each of them so that there's balance. That's a losing strategy. It just doesn't work. It leads to frustration. It leads to guilt. It leads to stress, all these things, as opposed to leading with integration, really striving for integration, meaning that I'm the same person wherever I am. So if I'm at work, I'm the same person I am at work that I am at home. I'm living in my calling, my God-given calling, my giftedness, wherever I am. And that's a life of integration. And so that's a big part of what I talk about with the leaders that I meet with is, that this idea of balance is, almost a losing scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Matthew wrote a book about it. It's called Off Balance. And it's all about work-life balance is a myth. And it's about work-life satisfaction. And that's what it's about. Like, if it would you rather have work-life balance or satisfaction? And sometimes we are the most satisfied. There are times in our lives when maybe we're working extremely hard and we have a big project and it's taken a lot of time and energy and resources. But at the end of that, we got so much satisfaction in that. Now you're also going to go over and say, hey, we did this, we completed, let's celebrate. And now I'm going to go take my family on a vacation and I'm going to have just as much satisfaction in my personal life so that I can come back and be rejuvenated and energized. And so we need to do both of those things. In fact, I have books for everything, but Matthew Kelly has written books for everything. So slowing down to the speed of joy, that's what he's talking about. It's that idea of rest and relaxation. And it's not surprising that you said this is one of the biggest conversations, especially just in our group alone, when we fill out our wheel of life. So for those that are listening, if you've seen the wheel of life, where it's you have your financial, your personal, spiritual, like all the different areas of life, and you give yourself a rating. And I think almost every time we get together, the lowest or one of the lowest is always that rest and relaxation pies for all of us. It's like, this is such a challenge for people. I am curious though, how was that worded? You said that leaders don't feel like they're not responsible for, or they don't feel like they contribute to?
Both. And it's not that they don't care, but they don't necessarily feel like that's their responsibility as leaders.
Got it.
Yeah. And so again, at the same time, their biggest stressor is their own personal work-life balance. So, it's like, wow, wait a minute. If that's my biggest stressor, maybe just maybe that's the biggest stressor for all of my people. And maybe I should take a little more responsibility for that. Right.
Well, I find it interesting too, because especially, this survey was CEOs all over, but with the C12 community, what I find interesting is how committed they are to people. So I think this idea and this concept is, they take it very seriously.
Yes.
And they really understand, it's like when we say at Floyd, your organization can only be the best version of itself to the extent that your people are becoming better versions of themselves. No one's going to disagree with that.
Right.
However, not all leaders are going to practice the ways in which will actually fulfill that, or when your team understands that you actually believe that is the case.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
What are some ways, because this is such a big challenge for leaders, how do you coach leaders into helping them with that integration, and then helping them? Well, we'll start with them. How do you help them? Because they have to be able to master that first before they help others.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. Everything that we just talked about, and even the books that you mentioned, you referenced, right, that Matthew wrote, like all of that stuff, slowing down to the speed of joy, and these others, so much of this is rooted in identity, right? It's rooted in our identity and our clarity of purpose. And so if we're constantly, and again, this was part of the data set from Barna, like that how important it is to CEOs. One of the most important things to them is that they are clear and living out their purpose in their business. What's interesting is that, in C12, the data is incredibly significant. It's something like, don't quote me on this, I think it's 90% of C12 CEOs have greater clarity of their purpose as a result of their membership in C12. And so the reason I bring it up is it's foundational to everything else. It's foundational, that awareness of, of my identity and my purpose, and how that connects to the business that I'm running. In other words, it's not just a money machine. It's not just about profit and loss. P&L stands for people and legacy as much as it stands for profit and loss. And so, both are critical. But, I always used to say in my business, like, when I focus on the lens of finances, typically I'm not making the best decisions. Now, as in healthcare. And so when we made decisions through the lens of finances, which is a very typical model in healthcare, right? Hospital systems, you name it. What do you think that means for the patient care? If I'm making decisions strictly through the lens of finances, it means patient care is second, right? And so we can have all the mottos and phrases and words, buzzwords on the walls that we want, but it's our behavior. It's the lens through which we make decisions day in and day out that really dictate the impact and the future of the business. And a lot of those businesses I saw operated that way end up failing, right? So even though they're focused on finances as the lens through which they make decisions, I'm not saying we shouldn't look at that. We need to. Results matter. But we need to be looking through other lenses first. And so I could give some examples of that. But again, I think for the leaders that I meet with, it's about awareness first. So awareness of my own purpose and calling, awareness of how that connects to my business. And then, beyond that, well, then what's the strategy? What might we do? What needs to change as we make decisions, about revenue generation, operations, org development? What lens are we looking through when we make those decisions? And I get to challenge those assumptions and, guide and direct and share some of my own personal stories to help create that awareness and to see what the potential impact really is when we maybe just tweak that a little bit.
This is why coaching is so important, because you get to ask those questions. And so often CEOs or even an executive, like, they don't have a lot of people to reach out to talk through this stuff, to have someone challenge them on their way of thinking or how they make decisions. And I often find it interesting how some of the best coaching sessions I've had or our coaches have had, they'll say, I think I asked maybe 2 questions and they just ran off and they said it was one of the best sessions they've ever had.
Yes.
Because we know, like, deep down, we know what we should do. But without that question, without that little push from someone else that is seeing from the outside in your challenge and your situation, we can get so stuck and caught up in our head.
And or get too busy and not take action, right? And so we have a saying around C12, you've heard it. We say do is greater than talk, right? Priorities are what we do. Everything else is just talk. And so, coaching, accountability is such a critical piece of that. And, ironically, or maybe not so ironically, CEOs and owners, leaders at the highest level lack accountability. There's not a lot of people holding them accountable. And in fact, of all of the aspects of C12 that members value, being peer quantity, peer quality, camaraderie, and accountability, those are the core 4. Accountability rates the highest. It's like, hold me accountable. I need that. I know I need it. I want it. I thrive on it. And it makes me better, right? It makes me a better leader. It makes me a better person. Maybe even makes me a better spouse, probably does. And it's why we do, spouse interviews and all kinds of neat things like that. So, but anyway, so yeah, that coaching, accountability, critical.
And coaching is such a gift. I say it all the time. If anyone's on, they're like, okay, we get it. Coaching is a gift. Because I say it all the time because I truly believe that. I've had some really incredible mentors and coaches in my life, and they have helped shape me and my career. And I'm so grateful for that. And so when you're talking to leaders and kind of going back to that work-life balance and how there is this sense of ownership of your people. Now, it is not your role as a leader to make sure your people are happy. It is your role as a leader to create an environment in which people can thrive. And so
that's right.
That is what we get to do. And coaching just supports that and helps that. So one of the questions that I love, or one of the topics that is interesting to me around when talking to leaders and their people is, do you know the superpower of your people? Like, what are their superpowers? Because that's another gift that we get to give people. There's people on your team, And like you said, we don't have this business self and this personal self. We are one person, one whole person. And sometimes it feels as though people are disengaged in their work because they are not, whether the role doesn't allow it, maybe they're on the wrong role, or they haven't been empowered to truly utilize their superpower, the thing that they do so well.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The problem is this, that there's a cost to operate this way. There's a cost to leading this way. And, a lot of leaders don't want to deal with that. They don't want to pay that cost. They don't want to count that cost. There's a risk. I remember, in my business and dealing with other business owners and leaders and talking about things like culture, I would talk about this all the time. And so number one, we need to care. I can't coach you to care. If you just don't care about people, I just don't think I can help you. It starts there, and they'll know whether or not you truly care, right? And so, it starts with that, but then it's are you willing to count the cost? And that's time, it's money, right? And maybe other things again, there's a cost to that, but on the other side of that, and this isn't the reason we do it, but on the other side of that, when people are thriving and they're flourishing at work, which was our mission in our business, was that every single person and their families would flourish, that there would be this ripple effect from our culture into their lives that would impact their families and beyond, right? Well, that took a lot of time. It took money. I had to hire, we hired a chaplain. We hired other people. I spent a lot of my time getting to know my people and their superpowers and dealing with their, a lot of values, like hang your coat up at the door, right? Leave your outside life out there, come in, put your head down, do the work, right? This is pretty common in the corporate world. Well, you could do it that way. That's one way to do it, but I would bet their turnover's higher. Culture probably isn't all that healthy, or at least not sustainable for very long. And so, I would mine for conflict. I'd be coaching our team, coaching our leaders on our organization, how to navigate conflict real time with real drama. I loved it. I was like, bring the drama, bring it to work, because it's not going away. It's just going to come out sideways anyway. So let's just deal with it, right? Let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. And you know what? The only requirement to work in our organization was that you'd be willing to do that. If you're willing to participate in the process, you got a job here. The results will come, right? And so, when I was recruiting people on our team, that was the conversation. Hey, this is our culture. It's not for everybody. If you're not up for this, no problem. And as long as you're willing to participate in the process along the way, you got a job here. But the minute that you don't, the minute you opt out or you're unwilling, you don't have a job here, right? Because it's what we do. And so, I got a lot of pushback. Oh man, inviting all this drama, inviting all this mess, lives were changed. More people participated in the process than not. And the people that didn't, we didn't want on the team anyway, because they didn't really share our values. They really weren't part of our kind of core DNA and what we were looking to build, which was aspirational at one point, but years down the road became true to who we were.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And
it's awesome.
And you said years down the line, this is a process.
Oh my God. But you know what, Kate, we scaled, significantly. We scaled significantly in a matter of probably 4 years, but it was because I spent the first 2 to 3 building the foundation, turning that culture around. And again, it was aspirational. I had the gift, the blessing of being able to recruit the talent I wanted that already had some of that DNA and kind of work. But anyway, that was the foundation we built on. And I don't know that we would have scaled without that.
You said foundation, and that's what I was thinking. That's the foundation of the organization. We have to get that foundation right in order for us to grow and build. And even as you were talking about creating that kind of environment, think about the level of loyalty and trust that you're building with your people, because you're not telling them, you're showing them.
That's right.
I care.
That's right.
I care about you. I'm fully aware that when you walk into this office, and if you're dealing with a sick child or a parent or divorce or any of the things that life throws at us, you understand that is impacting them and their work, because it can't not.
That's right.
We cannot shut off buttons and just keep going if something is bothering us. And so again, this doesn't mean that we don't hold our people accountable to the work that needs to get done or any of that. It just means that we are being human.
That's right.
And we recognize that people are going through things.
And it's a gift. It's a gift. We have that opportunity as leaders to jump into the pit with people and walk with them. Say, you know what, like, let's figure out a way out of this pit. Like, you're not going to be here alone. Let's figure it out. Right. And I mean, gosh, talk about like building loyalty, right? Like these companies and leaders, they want loyalty. They want loyal people. Like, you want loyalty. Like, that's the way to do it. That's the way to build loyalty, right? Just like customer loyalty. How do you build customer loyalty? Do right by your customers, right?
Yes.
Treat them well, build advocates. And it's the same with our employees. In fact, it starts with our employees.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love that. Oh my gosh. So C12, such a really wonderful organization. If there is a leader out there that is just in a space of maybe they have never been involved in that kind of organization, maybe they've never even had a coach, what would you encourage somebody that's thinking, I wonder if this is the right opportunity for me?
Yeah. So listen, there's lots of opportunities out there, right? There's tons. C12 is for Christians and it is for CEOs and owners, or sort of C-suite leaders, but lots of coaching options. And of course, Floyd, is the place to go for coaching. But if people wanted to find out more about C12, they could go to joinc12.com, wherever you are in the country, and put in your zip code and find out more about it and see if there's a chair and groups of peers gathering near you.
Has there been something that has surprised you about being a chair?
There's a couple of things. One is how hard the work is. To be honest with you, I've never worked so hard in my life. And I mean this, and it's not a complaint. My wife would tell you, I've never been more purpose-filled. I've never had more joy and peace in my work than I do right now. And you'll hear that from every chair. Just across the board, like it's a very common thing. So, but it was a little bit of a surprise. I underestimated just how much work it is, but I'm up for it. And then the other thing is, just how quickly relationships are built, community is built, trust is built within the forums around the table. I thought it might take a lot longer, and the level of authenticity and transparency and vulnerability. Hey, here's what's going on, whether it's in my life, whether it's in my business, wherever it is, that has been so refreshing to me because that's my heartbeat. That's who I am. And so that's been another just pleasant surprise.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Since we talked about work-life balance, work-life satisfaction, integration, however you want to call it, since it is a big challenge for a lot of leaders, there's someone listening right now and they're thinking, oh my gosh, you were speaking to me, Steve, when you were talking about that, because that is how I feel. I feel very like they're working when they're working. They feel like they should be with their families. When they're with their families, they feel like they should be working, and they really do lack that balance that they crave so much. So what is one thing that we can do starting today? Just something simple to kind of get that started.
Can I give you a couple? Couple things come to mind.
Sure.
So one is like Simon Sinek says, start with why, right? Start with why. Like dig into, document, define sort of your mission, around your identity, your unique giftedness, and do that so that you can live that out in every role that you have in your life, right? That integration piece. Be the same person that you are, without trying to be somebody else. You don't need to be anybody else. Just be you. The second thing is, listen, you named it, like rest and retreat, right? Rest and retreat is critical. So what do your rhythms look like? What do your daily and weekly and monthly disciplines look like? Are you getting time to simply be still, to slow down to the speed of joy? Read that book and live it. Start with, I tell you've heard me say this, Kate. I tell our leaders, start with 5 minutes. If that's all you can do, is spending 5 minutes being still and quiet, right? So important. And lastly, listen, I'm a man of faith. I'm a person of faith. I believe wholeheartedly that that has enormous implications on how we operate, how we function. And that provides a lens that informs how I go about my life. And so when I think about work-life balance, the things that stress me out and the things that I feel guilty about, Mike Sharrow talks about cosmic insubordination. And it's this T-chart, and there's a list of stressors on one side. And they're the things that I typically work harder at. If I just work harder, I won't be as stressed, and it's a dry well. But the guilt list, and that's typically the business, it's finances, it's all these other things. And on the guilt side, it's usually relational, right? If only my marriage were better, I had more time with my kids. And so what I do is I pray about the things that make me guilty, when actually we should be switching it. We should be praying about the stressors and leaving that's God's role. The things that we have responsibility, that we have control over, is those relationships. So we shouldn't delegate that to God, right? Those are our responsibility. And so it's cosmic insubordination. We've got to flip the script.
Oh, I love that. Oh, all right. Well,
and I'm speaking to myself, Kate, as much as anybody else.
Right? Isn't it great when you leave a coaching session and you're like, was that for him or me?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Which again, just goes back to community and the importance of community and being around other people that are able to be vulnerable enough to share what they're going through, especially in this social media world where it seems as though everyone's got it all figured out and everything is perfect and there's no challenges. And so to come to the table with, hey, these are just some of the realities of business and the realities of what I'm going through. And so I think it's that is something that I find to be extremely helpful, because you talk about it in our sessions, comparison, what's the quote? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's so easy to compare where we are to where we want to be and to where someone else is. And so to be able to have those conversations to guide us, to help us just, get back to ourselves, get back to our businesses.
That's exactly right. And I want to say this, there's a loneliness epidemic, right? That we don't really love to talk about, but CEOs, owners, leaders are lonely. And in fact, not just them, everybody's lonely. I mean, especially coming out of COVID, there's just a loneliness epidemic, but especially at the top. They say it's lonely at the top. It doesn't have to be. Exactly what you're saying. Get with a community, find a community that you can trust, that you can walk with. But here's the other reason why. We are far too hard on ourselves. And somebody might need to hear that. The vast majority of the leaders that I get to sit with, I'm constantly hearing them beat themselves up. And it's unnecessary, right? We are our own worst critics, especially as leaders. So I would just say this, like, while you're resting and retreating, and even in between, love yourself well, care for yourself, like practice self-care, because you're not going to be able to give what you don't have. So if you want to care for the people that are in your care, right? Your employees, your family, others, whoever else maybe that, has been placed in your care, you've got to care for yourself. Put your own mask on first, right? Before you can put it on somebody else.
Someone did need to hear that. I could feel it. I could feel that somebody is taking a deep breath because you just said that. So I so appreciate you, Steve. You are awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so fun to be able to chat with you. And thank you for all of your guidance. And we'll have to have you come back on as you continue to build and grow the South Florida community and continue to work with C12. It's, again, we love this partnership that we are building with C12 and the community, and being able to share our resources is wonderful. So I'm looking forward to continuing this.
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing everything that you guys do. You're doing great. Keep going. We need it. And thanks for having me on. Really, it's an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, I love it. And thank you all so much for listening. You guys, you're who we're talking to. You are the ones that are out there that are leading your teams, that are creating culture advocates, that are building dynamic culture so people love coming to work and accomplishing great things together. So thank you for all that you do. And until next time, lead with culture.